My camera isn't good enough to use my Restream on my computer. I've got like the monster computer here. So, we're using an iPad and an iPhone. Hi, I'm Linda Kay Gifford. As always, welcome. The neighbors, I think, are done chainsawing and chipping wood for the night. So, let's get going. I'm no Sybil, okay? I have alters because I have childhood sexual assault related C-PTSD, and having alters is quite common, actually. So we're going to talk about the difference today for the sake of y'all think I'm, okay, that was going to say be disrespectful to Sybil. Y'all don't understand. So I get asked 3 questions the most. One is, am I married? Do you read the profile? What are you doing here? Yes. Super happily. 2, what is my makeup routine? I'm like, seriously? Okay. You know what? I'll actually tell you later, because I'm sick of getting asked, and it's like almost nothing. And 3, what is this deal about alters? What do you mean you have alters? I grew up with you, or you're my sister, or what do you mean you have alters? Well, what you've seen on TV and major movies is like, you know, extreme cases. And yes, that kind of extreme dissociation exists. But for most of us, the kind of dissociation, the kind of alters that we have, and I posit as a neurolinguistic practitioner that, and I'm writing an actual whole book on this now, that the entire society, and especially women and others and children, have to dissociate. Dissociation is a normal part of life in culture as we know it. But to be specific, for those of us who were sexually assaulted for years as a child, groomed, my experience was being groomed from the time I was 10 to being, you know, manipulated into sexual acts before I knew what they were, to being emotionally manipulated into, okay, now that you're dirty and horrible, you also are the real mother to my children instead of their. So it was just a psych trip, right? Dissociation happens with people with C-PTSD because we have to live normal lives. And actually, the more a person has, a person with C-PTSD has the ability to dissociate, the more successful they are in life. That's statistics. I'm not going to cite them for you. They're all over the place. Go look them up. But the point is, the reality is that everyone develops their own certain brain chemistry, their own brain neural connectivity based on their experiences. And so when you experience both expectations in your daily life as a child, adolescent, teen, you know, you've got to look this way and talk this way and act this way and be polite and be respectful to authority and get good grades and study hard and not make any trouble. And, you know, just being a kid in any family based on our social structure is, and our media outreach, is crazy. I mean, that's part of why I'm doing this, is because we need to counteract all the negative media out there with something positive. With something positive. And dissociation is something that I've learned can be thought of as something that we do for good, not evil. When I talked about this with my lifelong, not lifelong, but since I was 36, that's over 20 years, I have talked with the same counselor intensively at times, off and on at times. And in writing the book and releasing the first chapter, and talking with her about dissociation, she said, this is kind of revolutionary. And I'm thinking, it's not revolutionary, it's just obvious. But then I realized it's only obvious to me because I was sexually assaulted for years as a child. And I saw a meme recently that really brought it home for me. It said, you never know how bad your experience was until you tell it to a safe person. A safe person. And I had to think about that for a long time. What is a safe person? Is anybody a safe person anymore? Were they ever? I mean, we just didn't talk about it before. We've been taught, I've said, and it's in my book, that shame is like a noxious fog that we create all around us, that our families and our societies and our communities and our media and everybody wants to uphold. They want us to keep our shame close because talking about what happened to us is too much, right? So back to dissociation. I've decided to use dissociation for good, not evil, for myself and the world. And in the past, I have dissociated in ways that may seem extreme, that may seem like I was doing more harm than good, but really I see now it saved me. And let me explain what it's like to be a child being sexually assaulted for years and being groomed into it, which is different. Being sexually assaulted once is horrifying enough. It changes a person and their trust and their power level, and it can lead to PTSD. But C-PTSD, the C, the complex, is repeated exposure to the trauma to where it becomes a way of life. And I've talked before about C-PTSD, and I want to head you now, if you have C-PTSD that's not related to childhood sexual assault, and even if it is, you should go to the Crappy Childhood Fairy. Anna Runkle is a survivor of a different kind of abuse, physical, emotional kind of abuse. But when it becomes sexual, the antes are upped across the board. Statistically speaking, if you were sexually assaulted and you have CPTSD, you're in like the top 5 percentile of these people are really screwed up. And then it's easy to think of yourself as really screwed up. But you've got to get over that. I had to get over that. And it took decades to even know I needed to get over it. And a couple more decades to find a pathway, to create a pathway. I found a lot of literature. I found a lot of debate. I found a lot of information. I found a lot of drugs. I found a lot of therapy. Before that, I found a lot of just insane running in ways that don't make sense. My own sister recently, the same night that she yelled and screamed me, shortly before she yelled and screamed me off the porch, was like, why did you move there? Why did you run away from home? Why did you move in with our other sister and her husband, my assailant? Why did you do those things? And I'm like, that's what I'm trying to tell you. I'm trying to explain the nature of grooming to you. In part because I need to feel better about myself, and I carried shame and guilt for so long that it was disrupting my life. And so it's not passing the buck to look at reality and say, this is what made my neural connectivity, my reactions, my responses the way they are. So back to dissociation. The thing that I've learned that makes me the saddest, that the reason I'm doing all of this is because I crossed a barrier. I crossed a barrier into feeling my own sensations physically, sexually. And that's why I'm so horrible, because I'm not supposed to talk about this. It's like, if I have to become the next goddamn Dr. Ruth, I'm not supposed to cuss. The next Dr. Ruth or whatever, that's what I'll do. I have no shame. I have no embarrassment to say that my pleasure matters. And I didn't know that. And the thing is, I know that if you have CPTSD stemming from childhood sexual assault, and if you don't like sex or are not interested in sex or are not orgasmic with your partner or think that having sex is just something that you have to do to appease them, or if you go away during it, if you're just, even if you're totally there, but you're just trying to do everything to make them happy and then you think success is that they've gotten off and they're happy. I mean, this is where you become not a people pleaser, a partner pleaser. And you need to realize, and this isn't about being selfish, this is about until you please yourself, you're not giving very much to that human being. And I have talked now with dozens of partners. And here's what partners say. So listen up. If you're like me, I didn't get it for a very long time. And I've been married and divorced 3 times. And I want to apologize, even though they weren't the right people for me, even though they did some really bad things, I still feel the need to apologize for not bringing my authentic self. But here's the deal. I had no idea that there was a self more authentic than what I had. I didn't know people could feel physical sensations with each other on an equal level. I thought that was something done to you or something you did to someone. And this is where dissociation comes in. You split. You split as a child because you know this, you're a human, so you feel sexual sensations and they are pleasurable. And the situation is so wrong that you immediately associate pleasurable sensations with so goddamn wrong. And that carries with you, but you don't realize it. So people with CPTSD stemming from childhood sexual assault often don't realize that they are performance artists. And here's what happens. They get into relationships. A couple things happen. On the personal level, you get into a relationship and you're feeling sexual feelings and you're feeling things that should feel good, and you know that this is part of a relationship because you're a grown-ass adult and that's the way it works, and you're in because you do want to, you like them, they've met your ethical standards, this is, I'm assuming, the best here, you're both good people, they're your person in the sense that they have moral and life fit. Okay, let's assume all that. So now you're feeling things and you get in there and you don't realize that your body shuts down and flips into what can I do to make them happy mode. Think about how much time do you give to thinking about their ex or their ex-girlfriend or whatever. What did they do? Am I better? Am I good enough? These are things you shouldn't be thinking. And I didn't know that. I didn't know that. I didn't know I was thinking any differently than anybody else. But I've learned through my own therapy and counseling, I've learned through my own coursework and studies to become a neurolinguistic practitioner, and I've learned through talking with countless people now that this is number one on the personal micro level, is unlocking that doorway to having feeling and sensation. And there are therapeutic ways to do that that I have talked about at length. I will talk about at length. We'll do it next week, but not now. Now I'm going a little more holistically. I want to stick on the topic of dissociation and alters. So I promise you alters. I always skirt around this because everyone thinks I'm crazy. But they don't. Basically, it's the opposite. Everyone thinks I'm not crazy, so they don't understand why. How can you say you have alters? You're a relatively normal freak flag flying person. And I'm like, well, because I had to duck out of consciousness. Because, as I say in my book, the most helpless of myself had to take the pain and the degradation and the humiliation and the sex, frankly. And that was little girl. That was the child. And she froze. She stopped. she stopped at 12-ish. And she'll always be 12. And so in my mind, sorry, there's a part of me that runs a separate dialogue, and I'm talking to her now and telling her to back down. Because I need to talk about this like a grown-up, okay? We're integrated now. We met when I was 36 in a counseling session. And I never didn't know what happened to me. I never didn't have memories. I never lost them, but I definitely had compartmentalized severely. That's what we do. We take our experience and we shove it into our hearts and our guts. And then the shame society that blames us somehow instead of our perpetrators, our patriarchal society, makes us swallow it even harder. And our families, then even the ones that feel for us, that are mad, that want to go kill them, they still don't want anyone to know because, shh, it's going to affect you in the rest of your life. And it will. I've lost family, all of them, frankly, because how can I do this to my great nieces, or great nephews and nieces? How can I do this? And I'm like, how can I? I'm trying to be blunt with the people I work with about my own experience. And I'm trying to raise money. And I'm trying and do rescue people. And I have given it great thought. And I have decided that my own need to make a difference in the world based on my own experience requires that I tell my own experience. So yes, little girl lives in my head. We run separate dialogues in the same brain, but we're always conscious of each other. No one's telling anyone to kill anyone. Nobody's got a different accent, but rage is I have had less encounters straight up with rage, and I'm trying to integrate what I call rage. Rage is a teenage boy character, I realized in therapy, who has always, when little girl is hurt and violated sexually, then she goes away. And I have, throughout my life, woken up on bathroom floors, in bathtubs, closets, in fields, and once on the church steps of a church in Atlanta when I was out of town playing music there. And I didn't know how I got there. I just know that I was triggered, and then I went home. But when I met Rage, I had a full-on... I had an experience where I was so enraged that while I was bringing my arms down on someone, on my then... not really partner, just someone, I had a tunnel vision experience of being this just angry young boy who was protecting a little girl. And he always told me, as a little girl, he said, you have to grow up. You have to survive. You have to present, and you can kill him. When you grow up, you can kill him. And that has morphed because I don't want to go to prison. And because I also now have some empathy for my assailant, believe it or not. My assailant wasn't a serial predator and that he always liked young girls. But I see now that that is society. That makes people think that teenagers and young teens and preteens are sexy. So yes, he went beyond the pervert line, not giving him a pass. Found out he has cancer, said good, and got in trouble and disowned. I'm like, I don't care. Does that make me a bad person? Read Forgiveness is Overrated. It's posted on my page. But I'm just saying, the people I dissociated into, rage, I see now that vision I had where I felt rage, I like grabbed him. And I've been working with him, and I have been working to incorporate rage into my life and my world. Instead of as someone making empty promises to a victimized, terrified child, I now want Rage. I want Rage to stand with little girl and defy shame before an indecent society. That's what I want. That's what we will do. So please, if you're in trouble now, RAINN, RAINN, 2 N's, it's a web thing. Call them 1-800-656-4673. That's RAINN, 1-800-656-4673. If you know or you think, if you suspect that someone is trafficking someone or assaulting someone or locking someone or their children in the basement or whatever, you don't have to get in trouble. It's all anonymous, even if you do report to Thorn. But if you want another level of protection, report to sweetsurvivor.com and I will take them on. I have already stood off. I've already had 3 armed assailants come to my house to take me on for trying to rescue a woman who at the last minute backed out and wouldn't come with me, and she's dead now at the hands of her husband. We have to save people. There are children, 1.2 million on average a year, children right now are sex trafficked, are locked in rooms, are being raped, are being tortured. You need to stop it. I need to stop it. I need your help. So please go start a $5 monthly donation to Sweet Survivor. Help us stay on the board. The workshops, I love to speak, and I just became an advocate for the Consent Awareness Network. So do visit consentawareness.net. And this is why I have to tell, instead of just teaching like I have been for a couple of years, my program to help people with triggers like mine, I now have to tell what my actual experience was, because consent legislation is the key to people like me being able to stop perpetrators from going back out there. I'm going to wrap up with, look at my site. I posted it today. A woman who was horribly assaulted, and her assailant has over 40 charges of domestic abuse and violence against him. He goes to jail here and there and gets back out and does it again. Why isn't he in jail? Because we call it abuse, sexual abuse. Rape is assault. Sex trafficking someone is assault. Violating a child sexually is assault. Putting your penis in another human being that doesn't understand it or doesn't want it is assault. So I am calling on all of you as your homework, and my charge to you right now is that you will call it assault from now on. Do not let anyone say sexual abuse. When they do, say, I prefer you called it assault because rape is assault. Will you do that for me? Will you do that? Thank you. All Stars Support Suite. I don't make a penny off of any of this. I don't charge for counseling. I just want to change the world so that my coming grandchildren and my daughter-in-law and sons and everyone I know doesn't have to go through decades of counseling and figure out developmental programs to help other people. This should not be a thing. This should not be a thing. Goodbye. I'll talk to you next week. Probably sooner.